If you communicate what you believe in and what you know to be true often enough for long enough, you will win hearts and minds. But you have to be relentless. You cannot give up. You cannot pivot. You cannot change course from those things. So above all, I am relentless in my pursuit of success doing what I'm doing.
You are listening to Innovate or Die, the podcast for companies that refuse to stand still. Now, who is the innovator that we have on deck today, Rob?
We got a good one. I will tell you, one of my favorite people who I've actually interviewed before in the past. Well, first off, she's had an incredible career in terms of television. And then what I love about her, and her name is Lo Bosworth, is that she started a company called Love Wellness, which I recall, and Lo will let us know, from like her kitchen table, that's become one of the biggest and I mean just top women's health companies. And it's really impressive. So I am super psyched to have Lo on the show today.
Welcome to the show, Lo.
Thanks. Hi, both. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for that nice intro.
Well, it's all the truth. And you have, I mean, just in terms of inspiring, and when I've spoken about you or talked about you in the past, interviewing you, I've always said that I give her a lot of credit because she built a business, started a business from, am I right, from the kitchen table or from the dining room table?
Yeah, from my living room in New York City.
From your living room in New York City. Hardcore, not with money raised, but the good old fashioned way. So a lot of respect there. And I want to start, really about going back and why did you start Love Wellness?
Sure. So I started my business in 2016 and launched right after the election, which was very interesting timing. Donald Trump launched the election, and a couple days later, I launched Love Wellness, and we only made vaginal care products at the time. So it's like a very interesting cultural moment. And I was dealing with some personal illness in the years kind of leading up to the launch of the business. And, I think women from the beginning of recorded history, have been pushed aside, cast aside, our needs dismissed, et cetera. And my experience when I was unwell really reflected that classic sort of research and information gap when it comes to women's health, right? You go to the doctor with a complaint or some kind of chronic issue, and they really just try to brush you aside with, here's some Prozac or get more sleep or eat an apple, whatever it might be. And, I had a long list of the ailments and things that I was dealing with, really bad depression that came out of nowhere, really bad anxiety that came out of nowhere, recurrent UTIs, yeast infections, things like that, things that seemingly were not connected, but boy, did they have an overall impact on my health. And it took so much self-advocacy, almost 18 months of me going to my GP before they finally were like, yeah, maybe let's run a blood test and see what's going on. 18 months. Can you believe that? And the results came back and they showed that I had severely deficient vitamin levels on my panel. And a lot of those deficiencies explained a lot of my neurological conditions, things that I was dealing with. But what they didn't explain was sort of the women's health issues, things that I was dealing with. And it required a ton of research that I took on myself, and then kind of finding doctors that aligned with that research to really understand that below my vitamin deficiency issue, I was really dealing with a gut health issue, a microbiome issue. Dysbiosis speaks to the malabsorption of nutrients, and it also speaks to vaginal health issues because the gut microbiome and the vaginal microbiome are interconnected. The gut microbiome really regulates vaginal health, interestingly enough. And so the picture kind of all started to make sense. And, a lot of people ask me, why are you the one that, operates this business? How do you sort of have the chops to do so? And what I kind of think about and say is that nobody else was going out and doing this work. Nobody else was taking the time, to go on PubMed and like read these scientific papers about, the bacterial strains, the type of lactobacilli that are found in the vaginal microbiome and, perform X, Y, and Z function. And everything that I read about and learned was so counterintuitive to the types of consumer products that were existing available in market in terms of like the ingredient list and the results those ingredients may have on the body, because I was somebody who is using or like as an example, like maybe like taking a gummy multivitamin that was like packed with sugar. Like we know that sugar doesn't support gut health. I was using a intimate cleanser that was packed full of fragrance, because you think, oh, if it has fragrance it's gonna like mask odor or whatever. No, fragrance may be a microbiome disruptor, it may be an endocrine disruptor, it may be a skin irritant. And so again, like all of the research was what it was telling me was so counterintuitive to kind of like the function of products available in the market. And I thought, well, with, my doctor's guidance here, I have a real opportunity to create a brand that really pushes the category forward, sort of through like, we like to think about it as like the microbiome movement, you know what I mean? And microbiome health is more than gut health. It's vaginal health. It's also hormonal health. And worked with this group of medical advisors, nutritionists, food scientists to kind of create the first, slew of products, which was all sort of like within the intimacy space, and launched the company. And I did it without doing market research because I didn't know how to do market research at the time. It's not like I could like go get IRI data or anything and like understand like the size of the opportunity or what the category looked like, because the category just didn't exist. And so I took a leap of faith and it has ended up really paying off.
Yes, being a good move. And I want to ask you, Lo, because this is what, I never understood or don't understand. And, you always hear about how, going back studies, females, women, they're the ones doing the shopping. They're spending all the money. Why did it take so long, right, for companies to wake up to women's health products, to selling women's health products? You're talking 7-8 years ago when you started this business.
Yeah, I think, the answer is complicated. Let me give you an example. The word hysteria, as in like mass hysteria, comes from the word hystera, which is Greek for uterus. So again, since the beginning of time, men have sort of ruled the world and just thought we were crazy. And so if you look at the origins of, the healthcare brands that have historically been in the women's wellness space, these are male operated boardrooms. These are male led leadership teams and executive teams. And I don't think it's for lack of trying, right? I don't think that like men have it out for women. I'm not somebody that believes that. And I think that products were put out to, support, sort of the quote unquote needs of women at the time, right? Which was to stay at home and make your husband happy, right? And so we were left to kind of deal with these normal bodily issues, with what was available, which was basically no research. And, companies like, I think it was Lysol that made the first intimacy cleanser for women. If that is like one of the most horrifying things you can imagine.
That is crazy.
So, it really comes down to, I think, the classic hierarchy of, business in the United States and like what those rooms looked like, from a leadership perspective down to the scientists, right? And products were made without good research available. And so it's sort of like guessing, right? It was like, oh, cigarettes are good for you. Sugar is good for you, right? Like this product with fragrance in it has got to be good for you. Just selling things to women to try to alleviate need states without any good like science or data to back it up. A long-winded answer to why, the offering has been challenging for women up until a certain point. And I think also, I've talked to a lot of our medical advisors about this. like OBGYNs. I'm like, well, why haven't you been telling me for years that gut health and vaginal health are connected? And the answer is like, frankly, like we didn't know. And like, it's not my focus area. I'm not a gastroenterologist, right? I think the times are starting to change and certain doctors are taking on patient care through a more holistic lens versus like their like sole focus, like what they were educated on, trained on. And for me, it's always been important to find doctors in medical care that really sort of have adopted that broader worldview or that broader view of how to take care of the human body, which is in a holistic way.
For sure. Now, going back to 2016, you're trying to get this thing off the ground. What was the biggest initial hurdle that you feel like you had to navigate around when you were coming to market, when you were first going? Is there one that just pops to your mind? Like, man, that was a huge problem at the time, and obviously you found your way to where you are now. But I'd just be curious, if there's any stories that come to mind of those initial challenges and how you navigated them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started the company by basically talking about it on Instagram, talking about it on my social media channels. TikTok didn't exist, but Instagram did, right? And I have almost 1 million followers on that platform and was able to get on, and just tell my story. And I think, some of the biggest things that I dealt with out at the gate over the first few years was sort of, I really had to kind of like validate what I was doing, not only from a science and medical perspective, right? But also validate why I could be the founder and CEO of a company like this with my background in television, right? I think to a certain degree, like that perception is changing, but it's like, you're a dumb girl that was on reality television. Like, how and why can you start and operate this company? And it's like, well, I actually went to UCLA. I have like deep interest in the space, and innovation and research is my passion. And I'm a woman. Like, I live in this body. I have this experience, right? And frankly, like, I'm brave enough to do it. So I think, I mean, the articles that came out were interesting to say the least in terms of reviews of the brand or my, role within it.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking initially, and my question was, did you lean on your name, and popularity? But when you explain it and you're talking about it now, it seems like it was almost a negative that you had to not only overcome this totally innovating a whole new category, but you had to overcome who it was coming from, right? It wasn't like you were going in there as this doctor or PhD or whatever it might be, even though you had put in the time, had studied this, and from what you've told us, I mean, giving us this education. But it seems like it was a harder time for you because of what you did prior on television.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's interesting about that though is, in a certain way, my previous experience and my audience really loved to consume the content that I was putting out about my personal story and the brand, whether it was for good or bad at the time, right? It was pretty shocking content, right? It's a woman who was on TV going on her social media and talking about vaginal health and gut health and her depression, right? In 2016, that was very novel. Now, a lot of people do that on the internet, but back in 2016, nobody was doing that, right? And so I don't think that a entrepreneurial OBGYN would have been able to come out in the same way as me and had the success that I did, because the awareness that I was able to create was significant and really helped me grow my business in the early years, right? And I think that naysayers quickly became believers in the brand if they went and did a tiny bit of research on their own, popped around the website, understood, that the business is supported by a great group of medical advisors. And frankly, if they try the products themselves, they're like, oh my gosh, this stuff really works. These are solutions that I've been looking for. And so I think that the storytelling that I put out into the world, paired with the education on, the female microbiome from gut to vagina to how the gut, regulates hormones as well, I think really helped to create a new way of wellness for women that eventually everybody did buy into. It just took time, right? And I still just tell myself every day, I'm like, if you communicate what you believe in and what you know to be true often enough for long enough, you will win hearts and minds. But you have to be relentless. You cannot give up. You cannot pivot. You cannot change course from those things. So above all, I am relentless in my, pursuit of success doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I'd love to ask you more about that mindset, because that's so important for entrepreneurs to have that almost like just pure stubbornness in the face of opposition, in the face of naysayers or people that have negative things to say about the thing that you're building. But then obviously the market telling you no, or saying we don't understand, or we don't care about what you're doing. How have you built a support system around yourself, whether it's relationships, whether it's peer relationships, other entrepreneurs, to really help train that mindset? Was it from time on television? Is it something that you learned from your parents? Like, how have you really instilled that sense of confidence that you will be relentless and you will push through because what you're doing matters to so many people?
I think in a certain way, it comes down to just like a basic survival instinct.
Sure.
I don't know if you've read the book, Letting Go, but in the first, 50 pages of this book, it sort of teaches you that all of our fears and our anxiety really come down to some survival instinct, right? Like, is it like, do I have shelter? Do I have food? Like, whatever it is. And for me, I knew in my heart when I was growing up on reality TV that I was not going to be able to sustain or support my entire life in the entertainment industry. It was not for me. It was not something that I was going to be capable of doing. And so I had to figure out an alternative to that in a way that made me feel good about myself, my time on this earth, and like what I could share with people. And so, I think that relentless pursuit of success really serves my deep fear for, needing to have shelter, be able to put food on the table, take care of my family. Like, I've tried to kind of figure out what it is, but it's kind of like basic instincts to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's really amazing just when you talk about that, being, and it's interesting. I want to check out that book, but being instinctive and the relentlessness and picking yourself off the mat just from, hosting my other podcast on entrepreneurs, of course, which you came on. It seems to me the number one thing that makes people successful is the ability to pick themselves off the mat, and the ones that are relentless. And then what I love is what you said is if you also have a mission behind that, and you have this cause that you want to bring to the world, it seems like having that relentlessness that you had that was either ingrained or how it came, and this mission combined is really what pushed you through probably those hardest first days at your dining room table.
Yeah, 100%. Like, to me, it's like, are you a survivor or not? Are you mean or not? And I've always wanted to prove it to myself, you know what I mean? That I could do it, that I could be successful, in a universe run by men, that, my discoveries could have some kind of impact, right? So it's very interesting when I think about it kind of like through that lens.
Talking about the business itself, right? And everything that you've done and how you've grown, it's amazing because, you have a DTC brand, but it's become this omni-channel brand. And now you're in all these big box stores like Target and Walmart. And what are some of the unique challenges that you're facing now with Love Wellness in selling in multiple ways to probably all different types of customers? I mean, females, but from all different walks of life.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think as the category has grown, one of the biggest things that we face is just very stiff competition. the first few years I was in business, there was not one competitor because, Love Wellness was really the brand that kind of created this new category. And now this is everybody's favorite category to jump into with a couple of bucks and, a knockoff product type of thing. And, we didn't really have to speak to in the early years our ingredient superiority, our innovation integrity, and really building a brand and creating products that are research driven with the goal of actually changing the status quo when it comes to how we serve women and their health. Supplements has always been a category of snake oil, and many of the newcomers to market are not helping that reputation, if you will. I think one of the things that I am having the most difficult time wrapping my head around right now, and I think this will change in the next few years, is the gummy vitamin category and how prolific gummy vitamins are when really, if you are trying to support your health, there's no reason you should be digesting a format that's made with sugar, tapioca, corn syrup, dyes. It's so counterintuitive to me. And I know that research is being done right now to prove the gummy vitamins are not necessarily safe or efficacious. And so I literally am so excited for that research to be published. But doing that research costs, millions of dollars, if not millions. And so it has to be done by universities and, pharmaceutical companies. They have to get brand XYZ, can't necessarily go out and do clinicals, to prove that, nor would we want to take on the liability of that risk to a certain degree. But gummy vitamins really break my heart because it's simple science, right? The research shows that sugar disrupts the gut microbiome. Why would you ever want to take a probiotic with an ingredient that disrupts your microbiome when you're trying to support your microbiome? That's so counterintuitive to me.
It's almost like they're just designed to sell more gummies. Yeah.
Correct, they are. And so at retail on shelf, I think that that's something that as a brand, we're trying to wrap our head around and how to communicate on that effectively, because a lot of those brands in my mind are basically copycatting good innovation and them pushing them through a substandard innovation funnel to create a final product that is snake oil. And they're still using the same positive structure function claims as these good brands are to sell what I believe are to be ineffective products. And there's not high awareness of that, at the consumer level. And so talking about our retail partners and all of this stuff, it's just that the competitive landscape is so cutthroat at this point in time. And so how, as a brand that really believes in, like I said, ingredient superiority, innovation, integrity, all of these positive qualities that you look for in a company. And how do we continue to stand out and differentiate ourselves from, I'll call it big gummy. Not big sugar, big gummies.
Big gummies.
I love it. I want to ask you, is that why, you tend and Love Wellness, you guys put out a lot of educational content around the problems your company helps women with? And what is the underlying strategy there? Is it to, teach people what is good, what is bad? Is it more to popularize, Love Wellness, or a combination of both? Or what's your real, reason for, doing more of that than I've seen other companies do in the space?
Our mission is very emotionally driven, and it really gets at the heart of the experience of being unwell in a woman's body and all of the things that we have to do to get the care and results that we need, because that journey is an extremely emotional one that is filled with grief, embarrassment, physical discomfort, and hopefully ends at a place of relief. And as a brand, I'm trying to infuse as much joy and hope into that journey as possible, because joy and hope were never part of that journey before. And this is me as somebody who like loves beauty, loves makeup, like loves a good lip gloss, loves holding that lip gloss in my hand and feeling how it makes me feel, which is fucking incredible. And I literally thought to myself, can I create a vaginal suppository that when you hold that baby in your hand makes you feel as much joy and hope as that sparkly pink lip gloss? And the answer is yes, through Love Wellness. And so that's what I hope to deliver and change as a mission, is fundamentally changing the emotional experience of what it is like to need care, receive care, and then come out the other side feeling so much better, not about yourself, but about the experience, right? The brand experience, the products, the education, right? When you give somebody a little bit of education, like this, the shame and the stigma about whatever it is that they're dealing with goes out the window. Typically, that's what I've learned in my experience, right? I teach somebody about, pH levels in the vagina and like how they're regulated. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. And like I feel like less embarrassed about that now. So I'm much more inclined to use this product or understand at least the use case of that product or the need for it, right? And like validate kind of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, you talk a lot, just hearing you explain what you do and what you're passionate about and what your company stands for. You frame it a lot in terms of impact. I'm curious how you think about goals and success metrics. Because a lot of businesses, once they reach a certain size, it can become more about sustaining a certain year-over-year growth or momentum or capitalizing on market share or, expanding vertically or horizontally into other markets. When you think about, as the visionary for your company, really leading the charge and charting the path forward, what do you look to determine whether you're being successful in your mission or not? Is it at an individual level? Is it just organic feedback? Are there metrics that you track? Like, how do you think about where you want the company to go from here?
Sure. Of course, there's metrics that we track. I don't know if it would be with Love Wellness or separate than this, but what I have learned quite a bit about being in this category of women's health is that the products that we're making are very highly regulated, but not for a very good reason, if that makes sense. A lot of the products that we're making are not pharmaceuticals, but they do serve pharmaceutical purposes to a certain degree. Like they positively infect infection states, right? Or, maybe they support a disease state to a certain degree. And listen, the FDA has laws in place for a very good reason, and it is to protect consumers. But I would say that in the women's wellness category specifically, we are trying to do a lot and educate a lot and explain a lot. And we are prohibited by doing our job in the way that we want to do it because of certain regulatory laws that have been set in place that frankly are esoteric and no longer make sense for the type of stuff that we are doing. And so like long term, when I think about how to really move women's health forward, it's by, trying to fundamentally change, some of the ways that these regulatory bodies that think about this category to better serve women, if that makes sense. And so I don't exactly know what that looks like. Do I have to go to Congress and be like, hey, Congress, go to the floor and be like, we need to change legislation around these things,
Yeah. Miss Bosworth goes to Washington, right? It's the new updated version of Mr. Smith.
I mean, I could go on and on and on this topic. Like, if you guys even knew about the ingredients that are in your OTC products that consumers are not aware of, right? Like, think about, by way of an example, like on an OTC label on a product, take like an antacid, just as an example. Your classic antacid, like your chewable tablet that helps you feel better when you're nauseous. The active ingredient is maybe it's sodium bicarbonate or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. On an OTC, by law, the only thing that you have to put or really describe like the function of or how much is in it is that active ingredient, right? So it'll tell you how much, I think it's sodium bicarbonate, is in that antacid, right? And then if you look at other ingredients, it's like, canola oil, sugar, dye XYZ. Doesn't have to tell you how many grams of sugar are in that product. Doesn't have to tell you how much canola oil is in that product. Like, what if you take Tums regularly and you have insulin resistance, or you need to be aware of your blood sugar levels, right? And like you're taking or eating all these things that you think are safe. They're like full of things that may throw your blood sugar out of whack, right? Like, how is that allowed, right? And so there's just so many things like within the category of drugs, OTC products, cosmetics, supplements, where the legislation doesn't really make a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's amazing when you discuss this and talk about it and start to think about it. And for me, I am so grateful for you, especially with my 2 teenage daughters now who, really are starting to use different products. It's amazing to me that if I had kids 8 years earlier, right, or 9 years earlier, they wouldn't have a lot of these options that you've been able to create for Love Wellness. So, first off, thank you for that. And I want to ask you, when you look at Love Wellness and obviously all this knowledge that you have, what is next? Where do you want to take the business? What is the next innovation?
For me, I think it's less product innovation and it's just the capacity to reach a bigger audience. Because even though we're in great retailers and we have fabulous business, our brand awareness is still low. I think that there's still so much work that can be done. And so it's less about a specific category of product, and it's just remaining curious about how to continue to drive our mission.
Amen to that. Well, Lo, where can people connect with you online, learn more about Love Wellness and all the work that you're doing over there?
If you want to find Love Wellness, you can do it at lovewellness.com, on Amazon, at Walmart stores nationwide, Target stores nationwide, and Ulta Beauty nationwide.
Wonderful. Well, Lo, it's been fantastic having you on the show. That wraps up this episode of the Innovator Die podcast. And just remember, when it comes to your business and everything you do everything in your power to not die. We'll see you in the next episode.